Hey there, welcome to Google's Innovation for the Nation 2013. I'm Christopher Dorobek, editor and anchor and managing editor for GovLoop's Dorobek Insider, an online program and blog that focuses on 6 words, helping you do your job better. And that's exactly what we are focused on here today, helping you do your job better. We're doing that by introducing you to the government transformers, the people who are out there figuring out how to get their jobs done in these challenging times. And we're going to talk about one of the biggest challenges out there, finding all those needles in all those multiple haystacks. How do you provide your people with access to that mission-critical data that they need to make better decisions? During this presentation and throughout the day, if you have questions or comments we want to hear from you, there are 2 ways to do that. You can submit questions on Twitter. Just use the hashtag IFTN2013. That stands for Innovation for the Nation 2013, IFTN 2013. You can tweet me at @CDorobek, or right here in the virtual conference center, visit the networking lounge within the event and just click on Ask a Question. Simple enough, right? We will try and answer as many of your questions as we can. A bit of a preview about what lies ahead. We are going to talk to the National Archives about how they're working better through collaboration. We're also going to talk about a really cool case study about automating business processes. And it's one of the most boring business processes that everyone has to do. It's horrible. You come back at 2:45, we'll tell you about it. And of course, if you miss any of these discussions, they're all going to be available on demand via the YouTube page for Google Federal, and we'll also send you a link. If you register, you'll get the link, and we'll make sure you can find all of them. But let's talk to some of the folks who are out there doing it, finding those needles in the haystack. Let me introduce Mike Lambert. He is the Deputy Director of Strategic Planning and Learning Analytics at the Defense Acquisition University. He fits that entire title on a business card. And Lauren Hujack is with Google. And I'm going to hand it over to you, Lauren.
Great. Thank you very much. And one of the things that we'd like to talk about today is really looking for that information and finding it in and amongst all of the stuff that constitutes the entire corpus of the data inside of your organization. And so that's one of the reasons why we wanted to bring Mike in and have a dialogue with Mike today, because his organization faced a lot of the common challenges that we see in, looking for needles in a haystack. And in fact, it's almost like looking for a needle in a hayfield, because there's so much information and there's being more that's generated by every organization that we encounter today. And so with that, I think we'll just go ahead and kick it off, and we'll have some dialogue and discover the things that that Mike encountered when they were going through their entire process of not just implementing a search technology, but also looking at different vendors, evaluating different aspects of different search solutions, and what it actually took to implement and get that stood up. So Mike, just to start off, why don't you tell us a little bit more beyond that very lofty title that you have, a little bit more about the Defense Acquisition University and what it is specifically that you do there.
Sure, thank you, Lauren. Defense Acquisition University is actually an organization based at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. We're one of the training organizations for the Department of Defense, and we train we're responsible for training the 150,000 acquisition technology and logistics strong workforce in DoD. And that comprises a number of career fields. That's contracting, logistics, program management, IT, and so on. My specific role at DAU is I lead the learning analytics team, and we use a number of tools, chiefly Metrics That Matter. Google Analytics is another one. But we have several tools in our arsenal that we use to measure, academic progress of DAU students and provide advice and insight on, where and how they're taking their learning. And also, we're trying to work towards that holy grail of predictive analytics and looking at trends and doing more in-depth analysis. That we've had with all the data that we built up over the last 10 years and our data mart with all of our tools, and hopefully again get to that point of the holy grail where we can get to some predictive capability. So I work with the team that's responsible for that on a daily basis. Also, as we have special projects come up, and as a matter of fact, Enterprise Search was one of those special projects that I was asked to lead a team on from about the midpoint of 2011 onward and throughout 2012. And as you alluded to, we started to get into that process of discovery and analysis about what kind of enterprise search tools were available out there in the wide world. And obviously Google is one that we came up with, as well as a number of other tools. So, well, did you have another question there? I don't remember.
Yeah, so no, that's actually, it's very interesting. So let's say I was a typical student there. What would be the types of things that I would search for? Walk me through a garden variety set of searches that students would be looking for. And, well, we'll just start there.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And Google Analytics bears a lot of this out. Typically, people are coming to dau.mil, our main corporate site, iCatalog, which is another major portion of that site, which spells out all of the information on our courses and our online courses and our classroom courses. They're coming to the corporate site to look for that kind of information. They're also looking for primarily ways to get to our distance learning and our online learning. They're coming to dau.mil, but they're trying to get to our learn.dau.mil, or our faculty members are trying to get to teach.dau.mil, which is the teaching portal that they log into to facilitate the courses online. And then the other major portion of the kinds of search queries that we get are looking for, or trying to target, our knowledge management or our knowledge sharing sites. And a lot of those sites are centered around two primary sites, and one is called the Defense Acquisition Portal, and the other one is called the Acquisition Community Connection, which is kind of a network of communities of practice. And then we have various tools and sub-sites that are hosted on both of those sites, but they're built on, one is built on the SharePoint platform, and the other one is built on Tomoe Echo. So really, those are the types of content, the types of resources that people are coming to Defense Acquisition University looking for.
So certainly a wide variety of backend systems coupled with a very robust set of searches, certainly a very wide variety of searches. So let's go back a little bit in time. Prior to implementing Google, talk me through what the search experience was like up until that point.
Sure. Well, again, we had these sites that I'm talking about have been around for probably the last 5 to 10 years. The search solutions that have been used on them have either utilized the search functions that were built into the systems or that we bolted onto the systems. We used an older product called Retrievalware, which has been end-of-life and out of support for many, many years. Before we started to look very seriously at this process over the last year, we extended Retrievalware. We had a very talented knowledge management development team that extended that product well beyond its useful life and probably the boundaries of its usefulness period. But we were using that. We were using SQL Search, which is kind of built into a lot of these systems, certainly the Acquisition Community Connection site. We were also using an older version of the Google Search Appliance, actually, on dau.mil and the iCatalog sites. And then we were also using, to a lesser extent, we were using Microsoft SharePoint Search that came bundled with the 2007 version of that product. So we had all these, disparate search solutions and search tools in place. And the really frustrating part of that for our users was that they were coming to, say, dau.mil, the corporate site, or they were coming to the Defense Acquisition Portal. And if you were conducting a search on one of those sites, you didn't realize that you were only searching within the confines of that site.
Right.
You were not pulling
data.
Exactly. You were not pulling back results from, a federated set of results from the ACC or the Defense Acquisition Portal,
right.
The sub-sites on those portals. So it was a really, really frustrating aspect of usage for our users.
So, well, in true DoD and military fashion, sort of making the best of what you had available at the time, but clearly, in an effort to, I think, get your hands around all of your data and provide a unified search solution, I'm assuming this is what sort of led you down the path of looking at providers in that space. Can you talk us a little bit about the selection process and in so doing, some of the critical factors that you were looking for when you were evaluating some of the search technology?
Absolutely. Well, we started down this path, and actually you and I met in the middle of the summer of 2011, and that's when DAU started to look at, where and how we could do federated search, and that's kind of how we were approaching it. because that was our major concern. How do we pull together all these results from all these sites and have a cohesive set of user search results for our users?
Sure.
So we kind of continued down that path through the remainder of 2011, and then at the end of that year, and our DAU president, was giving a presentation, and unfortunately, one of the search engines that she was using on one of the knowledge sharing sites crashed in the middle of her public, very public presentation. So unfortunately for her, she got a taste firsthand of what a lot of our users, out in the public world, a lot of our students were experiencing. So she came back to DAU and understandably said, we need to fix this and we need to fix it now. So we put together a team, and I was asked to lead that team, and went through the process of discovery and analysis through about the first half of 2012. And we came up with a set of basically critical requirements that we were looking at. And they included, obviously, results relevance, parametric or faceted search, where, if you do a search, you kind of get that left-hand navigation pane of automatically called results that are kind of sorted by topics or functional area in the case of DAU. Federated search, obviously, but then also, too, those everyday things that we take for granted and kind of expect in 2013 from a search solution, and that would be spell check, auto-suggest, personalization of results to the extent that we could do that.
Right.
And people search, that's something that we wouldn't use externally, but people search is something that we're interested in, looking down the line and perhaps using certainly on our intranet, but on some of our internal resources. And that's just something that we couldn't do with the other tools. And then kind of on the administration and maintenance side, we certainly needed something that was easy to maintain. Looking forward not only in FY14, FY15 and beyond, I don't have to tell you, and I don't have to tell our other our fellow government team members that we're coming into very austere fiscal times in DoD and the federal government.
Yeah.
So we can't throw developer resources at will at a search solution and customizing this incredible server farm to do everything that we needed to do. So we need something that infrastructure-wise, hardware and software-wise, fits into what we have. And complicating that was that we have a very limited infrastructure at DAU. We are completely at the ceiling of expandability in terms of our data center. We are expanding that within the next year, but right now we have to work within the confines of our limitations. So there was certainly that to contend with. And then obviously, as I've emphasized several times before, SharePoint 2010 is, that is our foundation. I would say that's easily 75 to 80% of the basis of our systems. So we have to have a search solution that can definitely work on that platform.
Sure. Which is, I think, most common. That's a very common scenario for a lot of, especially DoD and even civilian agencies. It seems that SharePoint is a very large footprint in that area. So talk to us about working with us. Tell us how it was like working with Google. I mean, obviously, you looked at a number of products. So what was the situation like?
Well, I can tell you with, in terms, when we got to the point of pilot testing, kind of narrowing down the playing field, if you will. And I don't know if you want to go there, but I'll kind of touch on that for a few minutes. We basically narrowed down the playing field to two solutions that we had in-house. I mentioned that we had an older version of the Google Search appliance in-house already that was being used on a limited basis on a couple sites. And then we also had a beta version, basically, of the SharePoint 2010 search solution in place. So what we kind of planned to do was to have a head-to-head shootout between those two products. And Google was actually good enough to approach us with the possibility of using the brand new version of the Google Search appliance, which was at that time version 7 in I think August of 2012. So we were looking at that, and we had those set up, and we had a number of users that we identified from across the enterprise of varying technical abilities, and they actually came in. We gave them a set of test scenarios to walk through, and the results and the performance between both solutions kind of traded back and forth. We kind of had one set of pilot testing over a period of 2 to 3 months, and then we had another set of pilot testing probably after about 6 weeks, after some tweaks were done on both platforms. And they kind of went back and forth. I will say that the SharePoint 2010 solution, the results came back a little bit better in our first round of pilot testing and in performance. But as is the case with the Google Search Appliance, if you have it up and running and if you let it settle in and as it gets used to users coming in with different search queries and so on, it learns what the users want better. So when we came back with the second second round of pilot testing, that actually kind of evened the playing field a little bit better between the types of search results, the kinds of performance that we got between the two solutions and testing. So in the end, we took a recommendation forward to our senior leadership. They're both very good products, but I think where Google had the edge and where Team Google was able to kind of help us see that and point that out was, the all-in-one, basically the all-in-one box solution of Google Search Appliance. It's robust hardware. It's certainly robust software. We're all pretty familiar with certainly consumer Google,
Sure.
but the enterprise search tool is very powerful within the confines of one box. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because in the case of Defense Acquisition University, that's a very good thing. Another thing that greatly appealed to us was the immediate amount of out-of-the-box. Basically, we didn't have to customize. There was a lot of features that were turned on and worked well out of the box. It does need some refinement. I'm not going to say that it doesn't need that at all.
Sure.
But we've done some refinements on it, and we'll continue to do refinements on it. Refinements in terms of dynamic navigation, the kinds of topics that appear on the left-hand side in the navigation pane.
Right.
When you're doing your search queries. But really, throughout this whole process, Team Google has been just a joy to work with, and you have been great in terms of bringing us up to speed, in terms of how Google Search can work, as well as on a number of other fronts, telling us more about Google Enterprise, Google Apps, basically, in the enterprise, and how the cloud fits into that. And you guys have really brought a lot of extra knowledge to the table that we've really gotten a lot out of it. But you certainly in terms of enterprise search, you've made us very much aware of what's out there. You made us much smarter on it. And at the same point, you didn't necessarily push us towards the Google solution. So speaking for myself and speaking for Defense Acquisition University, we've always appreciated that from yourself and from the rest of your team as well.
All right, it's great to hear. I kind of want to touch on something that you just mentioned, and no, it's not about how great and awesome we are, which we can expand on certainly if that's something we want to talk about. But you mentioned a couple times the dynamic navigation, which allows you to pick from a set of subsets or categories of information that came up.
Right.
Are there any other particular features about the search appliance that you're using today, or you're looking to use as the months come?
Sure. I did very briefly mention People Search. That is something that we tested. We did test in the pilot testing. We did run that through, and it worked. It worked pretty well for what we needed or how we needed it to work.
And if I could just stop you right there. So when we're talking about People Search, this is the scenario where we're effectively, not to sound too objectifying, but we're treating individuals in our organization or your organization like other pieces of content, in that you can search for aspects of about an individual, like what their skill sets are, where they're located, or anything like that, as you would other content in your corpus of data. Is that right?
You are exactly right, and that would be, for example, if you're and I'm just throwing consumer Google out there as an example. If you bring back a set of results in Google.com, in our case, in the terms of pilot testing, we actually had another column on the right-hand side where sometimes you might see ads or other value-added content in Google.com. But we actually had a set of results of some of the people that we had set up, some of the profiles which were pulled from SharePoint 2010 profiles, and they were populated on the right-hand side. And that would bring back not only basic things like contact information, but that would bring back, like you said, skill sets, what department they were in, what their interests in, if it was a faculty member, what what their expertise area of teaching was. So that certainly in-house at DAU, that could be extremely helpful.
Sure.
We have a number of systems. We have one dedicated talent management system, and a couple other systems that mimic similar capability. Not to mention the SharePoint profiles that most organizations that have SharePoint have enacted. But certainly from the standpoint of being able to federate results, search results from across the enterprise, and then being able to pull people search into that for those people who are authorized to see that content within DAU is a huge plus. And that is something down the line that we hope to take more advantage of. One other thing I wanted to mention, and it might be a simple thing, but it is I believe it's a newer feature of the of version 7 of the appliance, was the document preview. And as a matter of fact, we've enabled that. We're getting ready to go with an initial operating capability in a week or two with the initial, basically the debut of this. And one of the nice things that I've noticed when you hover over a search result, it's popping up, whether if it's a PDF, a Word document, an Excel spreadsheet. You're getting that little preview of what the document is, and you're being able to see immediately what kind of content is it, because that's fairly critical, especially on something, say, like, for example, the Defense Acquisition Portal, which has tens of thousands of regulations and policies on it in Word format, in PDF format, presentations in PowerPoint, and so on.
Right.
And if you can tell very quickly at a glance what kind of content that is, that's just so much of an improvement over what we had before.
So, and are you using multiple pages of this? Because I know that a lot of one of the benefits of it is that you can, before you commit to clicking on the link, you can actually see, like you're describing, what the document looks like before you click on it, what lies behind that link, which in a lot of cases doesn't make that big of a difference unless the file is particularly large, like a PDF file or a PowerPoint file.
Right.
But a lot of times the documents they'll have the same exact cover page, or it's very similar. So are you guys using multiple pages into that preview so you can actually get to the meat of the content before you actually click on the link?
We are.
Excellent.
We are. Yeah.
And how?
I just want to butt in for 2 seconds because I think it's such an awesome conversation. But it's easy to forget how searches have just become such it's how we find things nowadays. And I know you sent me the link to the Calgary website, and I don't want to get away without showing that off a little bit, because it's sort of search is fundamental to what they're doing, isn't it?
Sure, absolutely. So not to take away from anything that Mike is talking about, but unfortunately, as it happens with a lot of our sort of DoD customers, there are situations that are presenting themselves that actually prevent us from showing his actual website. So what we've done is we've selected another customer of ours, which is the City of Calgary. And so one of the nice things about the City of Calgary is that their website utilizes Google Search as sort of its core foundation. And so a lot of the things that we're talking about, Mike and I are sort of discussing, become much more clear when we go ahead and do an actual search. So if we look at the City of Calgary's website, for example, here, and we do a search for something like a dog license, we'll notice that much like Google.com search, as I'm doing the search or as I'm typing those terms, the actual word itself or the search terms will pre-populate in that. So yes, this is something that I would look for. And now we'll get to see not only the search results that come back, which is something that you would expect if you're accustomed to using something like Google to come up with your normal typical search, but you'll see the things that we're talking about. So out here on the left, you'll actually see this dynamic navigation. This is what Mike is referring to, where it will break down the categories of results that came back, because there's 680, so it'll help us sort of have a dialogue with the content. So from a very general, broad term, we can help the user find things like specific documents that relate to this, or specific city departments that relate to this. And this has the benefit of, I think, what originally the things that an expert or advanced search were sort of intended to do, right? So you would go and you say, I'm looking for this and this, but not this or this. And so it really put an imposition on the person doing the search to say, we're assuming you know a lot about the data that you're searching on, when in fact I may have just moved to this city and all I'm looking to do is make sure that I'm in compliance with the local laws and I want to get a dog license. I don't know what category this is under. I simply am looking for this type of information. And so in this particular case, it'll break down by, underneath the city, by department. This could be anything, though. In Mike's case, it could be by department. It could be by a particular person, like a professor or somebody who's taught a class. We have customers who are using this for things like national stock numbers or maybe chemical compounds or something. And this has a number of benefits. So one of them is sort of discovering things, non-obvious relationships, or stuff that might exist that somebody might not know of. So if I do a search and 10,000 results come back, and I find of those 10,000 results, 500 mention this particular person, well, now I know that that might be a subject matter expert in that particular topic. And so there's another place I can go that I wasn't heretofore aware of to find additional information on that particular topic.
We're running out of time so quickly, and I mean, this is something that every agency, and I want to close out with asking both of you a question. I'm going to go to Mike second, but Lauren, I'm going to start with you.
Sure.
Help folks who are sort of in this phase where they're hearing what you and Mike have been talking about, and they're saying, yeah, I have all this information, and it's all over my organization, and we need that data to be able to make decisions quickly and efficiently, and we can't find it. There are all these needles in these haystacks.
Right.
Give them sort of a checklist of what they should be thinking about. What should they be doing in order to be prepared to do what they're doing over at the Defense Acquisition University?
Sure. Real quick, then, I'd suggest a technology that has a universal reach. And so in order to provide somebody with a single point of access for finding all of that stuff, like Mac had mentioned, you want the user to have the comfort of knowing that if I go to this one place, I am now searching everything that's available to me, and I don't feel compelled to, if the results don't come back what I'm looking for, to force myself to go to another technology to sort of find that. So a technology that has a broad reach and can understand how the data is categorized in each of these different locations or silos of data, whether it's in something that's as well structured as, say, SharePoint, for example, or something that has very little or no structure, like a file share or something along those lines.
Mike, bring us out. You, I'm sure, are hearing from other federal agencies who are saying, hey, we have this same problem. We have data all over the place. We haven't been able to really get access to it. What would you tell them to think about? Create a checklist for them.
Yeah, I would say right up front, and I'm not going to definitely hold us up as the model, but one of the most important things that we did was, first of all, you need to involve the entire enterprise. You need to have representatives. You need to have representatives from every business unit in your enterprise. It sounds kind of like a no-brainer, but it's extremely important because you're going to have parts of the business units that don't want their data shared at all. For example, our human resources department or certain parts of our finance department obviously wanted nothing to do with being attached to Google on an enterprise basis, and I get that. So you need to understand what needs to be protected in terms of data and what doesn't need to be. What should be publicly available. The second part of follow-on to that is use those representatives from each of the business units to come up with your user requirements and your administrative requirements. And you need to make sure that you get buy-in from everybody that's representing all the business units. It's absolutely critical, and that's the way that we approach this. It had been done semi-haphazardly in the past, in terms of, well, maybe we should do federated search, but we're not quite sure how to do it or how we should tackle it. This is how we did it this time, and I think we had a lot of success with it in terms of identifying our requirements.
And Lauren, I know this is so hard for you to do, to answer a question in like 10 seconds, but Tom asks a great question. Do you have to implement special business rules for implementing this data in order to have that universal search? Do you have to lay all that out in some kind of special way?
Well, I think the most important thing, especially when we're talking about government organizations, is making sure that we respect whatever the security profiles are of that data. So the first is making sure that the search appliance or whatever search technology you're using has access to that data so it can create its index. But then the second part of that is making sure that we reveal the results only to those people who have authorized access to see it. And in so doing, the search appliance can actually utilize whatever protocol is in place to protect that data and restrict or redact the results to make sure that somebody isn't seeing something that their particular security preference isn't allowing them to see. I think that's probably the most important business rule for that.
That's
I think
critical.
there's much more to talk about there. Tom, go over. They're going to hang out and chat for a little bit, so you can get that answer. I think there's a lot more there that unfortunately we just didn't have time for.
I did my best. I had a very small window of time there.
I know that was quick for Lauren. So
Yes,
I want to thank Mike Lambert from the Defense Acquisition University and Lauren Hujak from Google. Great job, both of you guys. Reminder: if we didn't get to your question, Tom, go over. They're going to be Mike and Lauren are going to be hanging out. Well, not hanging out. They're going to be chatting in our virtual conference center. You can go and talk about that and anything else that you wouldn't cover. Great job. Congratulations, Defense Acquisition University. And this and all of our sessions, we'll send them out to you. They're all going to be available on the federal YouTube page. You can find them all there. Coming up here, we're going to talk about automating business processes in the cloud. This is a cool case study. How many times have you had to do those horrible reviews of personnel? Wouldn't it be great to automate those? We're going to talk about that later on. We're going to talk about engaging users with innovative web apps. But coming up next, we're going to talk to the National Archives about how they are working better through collaboration. That's just ahead. Stay with us. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Mark. Great hanging out with you. Thanks for being a part of Innovation for the Nation.